So again, we're going to be talking about SEP 12.1 and its Insight features. Just some stuff about me real quick. I'm an authorized Symantec security consultant, and my focus is on a lot of security products like SEP, which is Symantec Endpoint Protection, data loss prevention, also known as DLP, some PGP encryption stuff, and overall just virtualization and packaging technologies. I'm a little bit of Altiris experience as well, just to help people who use Altiris and Symantec products side by side. Some stuff about the company I work for, ITS Partners. We are a Symantec National Partner and a Platinum Partner. And last year we were the Partner of the Year. We're also a Symantec Partner of the Year for 2 out of the 4 years that it was that the award existed. We're a Symantec Specialized Partner. We're also focused exclusively on endpoint management and security solutions. We're based out of the wonderful city of Grand Rapids, Michigan. If you're not familiar with it, it's a beautiful place to live. And one of our catchphrases here is that we're an engineer-centric organization, which means that a majority of our stuff done, our business stuff, is all about our engineers, and it's focusing on the engineers to create a business. So what we're covering today, we're going to go over a basic Symantec Endpoint Protection 12.1 stuff and some stuff that's new. I'm just going to touch on that briefly. If you guys aren't familiar with it, that'll hopefully get you a basic idea of what's going on there. We're going to talk about Insight and what it means and what it is, why your company needs Insight, how Insight works, and then 2 in particular features of SEP 12.1 is Download Insight and the Insight Cache Server. And then we'll also end the whole thing with a live demo, and we'll talk about some Insight features, specifically just settings and policies and stuff like that in SEP 12.1. So first, what is SEP 12.1? It's the next release of SEP, the SEP package or the SEP product. It comes right after SEP 11, in case you can figure that part out. It is not SEP 12.0, which is an SB only release. It's kind of confusing. People ask, what happened to SEP 12.0, and we just tell them it doesn't exist. You need to. It's SEP 12.1. There's a small business and an enterprise edition. It's also the market-leading suite of component protection technologies, which is a fancy way of saying that it's top-of-the-line stuff. Now here's 3 things I want to focus on specifically about SEP 12.1. First of all, unrivaled security, and I like to follow that up with, again, the whole top-of-the-line business is that SEP is, Symantec in particular, is like the best-selling thing, and most of that is because of its unrivaled security practices. It is, if you notice, that it holds a majority of the market, and we at ITS really believe in what they do. Blazing performance. A lot of you might know that SEP 11 was not exactly the fastest package, and SEP 12 really does improve on that. You'll notice a lot faster scan times. Me personally, I noticed that I actually don't even notice the scan going in the background. Half the time it just, comes up and says, "Hey, we're done with the scan." I'm like, "Whoa, you were scanning? Like, that's crazy." So a lot less resource hog stuff for those who are very mindful of that. That's a good point to make. Also, there's a lot of virtualization features in SEP 12.1. There's Insight Cache, there's download randomization, there's scan randomization. Overall, a lot of features that specifically focus on virtualization. If you're more interested in that, there's actually a video on the ITS website about virtualization that I, in another security guy did, which is very interesting. That should be up actually very shortly here. It was filmed just a few weeks ago, so that should be up in a week or 2. So I want to kind of nail down here first, what is Insight? And there's a lot of Symantec products, specifically security products, that use the term Insight. And I just want to give some examples and then kind of narrow down what we're talking about today, because it can be kind of confusing if you're not familiar with the term. So several products that feature Insight. First of all, we have Data Insight, which is a part of data loss prevention, or also known as DLP. And it's just interesting to note that that's there, and it also uses the term Insight. There's also Symantec Insight Inquire, which is an application performance and availability management for clients and servers. Again, that just mentions the word Insight, so I want to touch on it. And just those first 2 are really just more of an exclusion. Like, don't focus on those. And it's more just so you, the listeners, and the users don't have to be like, "Oh, what is all this Insight stuff? Like, what are we talking about with SEP and all that stuff?" Just focus on the last 2. And that is the shared Insight Cache Server, which is, of course, a part of SEP 12.1. That's part of the virtual environment stuff. Basically, it works on a voting system from clients, and they report findings here. I'll talk more about it later, but just know that's part of SEP 12.1. We'll be talking about it today. There's also Download Insight, which is a part of SEP 12.1, and it leverages the Insight stuff for scanning downloaded files. So why do you need Insight? So you see that cool graphic up there, and I'm going to explain it as we keep going. So imagine that we know about every file in the world today, every single file ever made. How many copies of each of those files exists, and which files are good and bad. Now imagine we take all those files and we order them by prevalence with bad on the left and red and green on the right for good. Now you can kind of see, my mouse will show up. Yeah, there we go. You can kind of see on the left side here that there's a huge stack of files, and that's known bad files, and you can see there's a lot of them. And those are really easy to stack. They're really easy to classify. On the same side over here, we have a lot of green, and there's a big stack over here. We can see a lot of them. So I like that chart, but I prefer this chart a little bit better. You know, again, you kind of see, I'm going to go back a slide just to illustrate. You see that same kind of curve. There's a high left side and a high right side. It's the same thing over here. In the middle there, we have something called the long-tail distribution. So let me talk more about that. First of all, we have bad files, and if you're trying to stop those files from running on your network or any of your client machines, blacklisting works really well because they're all known bad files. It's really good. Just be like, hey, I know that's a virus. People have told me it's a virus. We all know it is, so let's just blacklist it, completely. Works really well. On the far right side, whitelisting works. Applications like IE and Firefox and QuickTime, all really easy just to be like, hey, you know what? I know that's a trusted thing. Like, it's obviously not a virus. All the processes it runs are almost across the board friendly. Let's just go ahead and whitelist it. So those two sides aren't the problem. It's that guy right there. And unfortunately, neither one of those techniques really works well. And that's unfortunately where a lot of the malware falls that your clients are getting infected with, is that long tail is what we call it. It's not, you can't, whitelisting and blacklisting just doesn't work well for it. So there's got to be another method. And a new technique is really needed for that. And that's where Insight comes in. Come down to the shared Insight cache. And what does it do? Pretty much it just takes client statistics from across your network, and the clients send in their vote, quote-unquote vote, for if a file is good or bad. I like to call them clean or dirty vote. And as long as the client has the most recent virus definitions, its vote is counted. So now when a client, specifically virtual clients, request from the Insight cache, hey, is this file good or bad? If a whole bunch of votes have already been cast, hey, that file's good, it's just skipped. It's the client says, oh, I know that's clean because the Insight cache is telling me so. Go ahead and skip it. On the same side, if the reputation is negative or if it doesn't have one, the file is scanned, and then the client submits a vote to shared Insight cache. So very quickly, you'll have a reputation on every file on your network just based on client scans. And the more it scans and as more scans occur, future scans will become quicker. Just one thing to note, the Insight cache server does none of the scanning itself. All the scanning is done by the clients. All right, so what does download Insight? Well, a better question to ask is, what does download Insight check? And it checks any files that are downloaded. Well, first of all, it checks any files that are downloaded by Internet Explorer, Firefox, or Chrome. A good thing to note there is that Safari and Opera are not on that list. Now, it's not to say you can't use them in your network. That's entirely up to the network admins and the system admins and all that stuff. But the big thing to note here is that because they're not supported, that download Insight will not work for any download started on those browsers. It'll also work for user-downloaded files and drive-by downloads. If you guys aren't familiar with the term drive-by download, it's pretty much just any download that's not initiated by the user. Also scan attachments and emails and files from instant messengers. I also thought this was interesting. Downloads from file sharing programs. Now, that can be anything from the top torrent engines. And now we're not condoning piracy or anything here because torrents do actually, a few of them actually do have legitimate purposes and are useful and are completely legal. So a good thing to note there is that file sharing programs are in fact scanned, and it does leverage Insight. And if you couldn't tell from just the things that it's checking, download Insight is mainly for prevention. In fact, that's all it's for. And its goal is to mitigate malware downloads and any other harmful virus downloads. It checks software as it is introduced to the machine, and that's another key thing, is that it stops it. Like if it's already running, then download Insight it's not what you need. Another way to say that is that if it's only for prevention, then if you're already sick, then using a vaccine isn't going to help you. You need to get the cure. So think of download Insight and Insight Cache as preventative measures. Think of it as a vaccine. If you already have an infection, there's other tools and services that you can use, but Download Insight is not one of them. Now, it's not to hate on Download Insight. There's plenty of other SEP features that do focus on that. Okay, so really quick, let's move on to the demo. I just want to quick cover what we're talking about, and let's just dive right into it. We're going to do a basic overview of some SEP stuff, just some user interface, stuff like that. We're going to talk about some configuration and policy settings, mainly the protection level settings and kind of how you can tweak that to your needs. Also on that same area, we're going to be talking about age and prevalence settings. We're also going to be talking about how to correct a false positive and false positive prevention, which is all done through defining exceptions and viewing block events. You can also sort by application web domain. I'm not going to talk about those two a whole lot. I'm just going to kind of show you where to find them. I figure that's pretty simple concept, is how to block by application or create exceptions by application in web domains. Now I have a virtual server here. I'm just going to go right to the home page here. You can see some exceptions here, some attention needed events right there. The only reason for that is because I just isolated the server itself. The clients and the DC and all that isn't up right now, just because I wanted to focus on just the SEP manager. So yeah, if you see any weird things like that pop up, it says, oh, you have offline clients. That's the only reason. It's not because I broke anything, because they're just turned off. So let's talk about the protection level settings first. If you notice on the left-hand side here, you get a whole, I call these pages. There's several different terms for them. They're pretty much all the same basic idea, but you have, your client's page. You also have a policies page, but within different tabs, you might see, so for example, here we have clients on the left side and then a policies tab. So just to keep them from getting confused, I call, the policies pages on the left side, policies tab is on the top. So I'll call them tabs and pages, respectively, just to avoid confusion. Okay, so let's open up the client page here. And we are going to keep on the policies tab. It's the second one in. We're going to click VARs and spyware protection policies. And make sure here really quick, I just want to show you guys a quick little funny thing that happens. Because all these are inheriting, you see inheritance is turned on for my company and also for the London location in this example. If you go back to the my company right here, you can edit in there, but let's say we go down to the London really quick and try to change it. It gets really angry. You can see that it says it's inherited. Please, please turn off inheritance in order to change these values. So just make sure, if you want to edit stuff, you change the inherited location, or go ahead and turn off inheritance if you feel comfortable doing that. It's all up to you guys. Okay, so let's go ahead. Since all these are getting inheritance, we're going to just go ahead and just change it right at the company level. And go ahead and click Edit Shared as this comes up. Again, you're clicking on Virus and Spyware Protection Policies up here at the top. Go over to the left side. It's under Download Protection. Now you can see a lot of other products here, but I'm going to just specifically talk about download protection stuff. Okay. You can see here the slider, which is kind of a cool thing. Gives you a little description about what each setting does. Now, I prefer the 5 to 6 range. This is usually pretty normal. You can see kind of like the typical and high. 7 and 8 are maybe really secure environments. I like to call 9 the paranoid level. I wish maximum wasn't the word. I really wish it was paranoid. Pretty much it says anything that trends towards a good reputation, even block that. So let's say a file is like, hey, I'm kind of friendly. Can I come in? It's like, no, you need to be like confirmed friendly. Like you need to be, the best behaved file I know before I let you in here. So 6 and 5 are a little more forgiving. They'll only trend towards files that have a good reputation. 7 and 8 are kind of more mostly good files, are very good files. You maybe misbehave every once in a while, but I would highly recommend staying in 5 or 6. There's also the age and prevalence settings, which are kind of cool. If you mark these 2 checkboxes right here, you see files with and files known by users for. Now, this isn't an entire Symantec community, so this is completely up to you to turn on. If you don't feel comfortable using Symantec community settings, just don't turn these on. But let's say that I like the terms in here too. You can say files with 0 or fewer users. So let's say it's a brand new file. Nobody's ever seen it before, or no one's ever used it before. There you go. There's your 0 setting. I also like the millions of. So anything over 1 million users, it will also delete and detect. Also, files known by users, you can also change the number of days. So if you want 2 weeks, you change it to 14 days, not 214, 14. There you go. You can also, this is a great setting right here. This actually causes some issues if you have this checked or don't have it checked, depending on your network settings. But you can also automatically trust downloaded files from the intranet, like your internal company site. So you're not blocking your own content, especially if you're the one pushing it out. That can be very frustrating for administrators to push out content, only for us to have to be like, no, you're not allowed to. Like, don't take it. So I like that it automatically trusts any files downloaded from the internet website is a great setting. On first contact, you can change some settings here for malicious files and unproven files. Malicious files are known bad, trending bad files, and of course unproven files are just, I don't know what this is. What do you want me to do with it? So it's a first-time see situation. So on the first action, let's say leave it alone. Let's just log the event. And if you see when you do that, this grays out, which is kind of cool, because you don't want to. It's leaving it alone. So obviously you don't want to take any further action because that's always going to succeed. Is just don't touch it. So let's try quarantine risk. You see that this second action comes back up again. Now, if that fails, you can always try something else. And of course, if you have quarantine selected, then delete risk is your second option. You can't do anything else. On the same side, if you change this to delete, your only other option is to quarantine. Or, of course, leave alone is always an option. So that's a kind of a dynamic thing. As the list changes above, it will change the list below. The other options for unproven files, you have delete, leave alone. You can also create a prompt, which is kind of cool. Or you can, of course, ignore it completely. Don't even log it. Which is the very bottom here. So you just not even creating a log. Just ignore any unproven file and just let it go ahead. Another cool feature I thought was really kind of handy was changing the notification message if there's ever an infection on the computer. So as long as you turn on this check mark, you can maybe like freak out a user and say, hey, you broke your computer, congratulations. Or, something like that. I mean, I highly recommend playing around like that, but you can make it whatever you want, or something, to contact IT or call support or something, something like that. You can change it to whatever you want. One thing to note is if you leave that checked, it says you do want to leave a message, and it can't have a blank message, so if you try to hit OK, it freaks out and says, hey, download protection, you must have a notification message if you have that checked. So let's say we don't check that, it'll just do it. Yep, see, then you're fine. So just some stuff to note there. All right, so that's the configuration policy creations section of the demo. Let's move on to correcting false positives and false positive prevention. We're going to stay around here. Go ahead and keep in the client's page in the policy tab. And we're going to go down to exceptions policy. And again, edit shared. And again, make sure you're not in the, if you have inheritance turned on, make sure you're at the level above until you don't have inheritance turned on anymore. Of course, at the very root of the My Company up here. And it may have a different name depending on how your network is configured or how you name things inside your SEP manager. But either which way, make sure you're at the root, or at least don't have inheritance turned on. Edit shared. We're going to move over to exceptions on the left-hand side here, right underneath overview. Let's go ahead and click add right here. Now this is interesting. You can add two different exceptions. You can either add a Windows exception and Mac exceptions. And now it's not talking about Mac addresses. It's talking about Mac as in Macintosh. This is adding a security risk based on the file or folder. You can see here the prefix available. So let's say you want something in your library. And let's say you have a folder in there called music. You don't want anything in your music folder to cause problems. There you go. Poof. And now we have an exception item, and you can see the wildcard and stuff thrown in there. And it'll tell you what platform it's for. And it'll tell you just what kind of exception type. And then, of course, the action is ignore. So the same thing here. So you can see the Windows is a little more varied. That is one advantage that Windows has over Mac as far as SEP is concerned. So let's go ahead and try to add. Application. And we had an application to monitor. let's just call it example.exe. Very cool. Go ahead and hit add. You're gonna hit OK. You can see it show up right there and how it applies to all clients. Same thing over here. Let's add another one. Let's try folder this time. You can see the windows changed now. TV prefix available again. This is a little more. You can kind of see like, okay, let's do system. Actually, you know what? Let's do Windows or something like that. And you can change the type of security risk. If it pops up in Sonar, if it's just a security risk, or like, you know, let's just do all, just to kind of carpet bomb the whole thing. So that's defining exceptions. Let's go to try and view block events. So I'm gonna go ahead. You know, I'm just gonna delete these for my personal sake. Now we're actually gonna change pages here. We're gonna move on to the monitors page and logs. So you can see I still have a page up. We're actually gonna go right back to that page. You're gonna change the log type to risk, and you can leave everything else just fine. Go ahead and hit save filter. So you can see that I already had a default one set. If you can tell, I would practice this already. So I already had a filter selected, and I just called the default. It always changes it to default no matter what you pick in there. It'll just change the filter type to default, and you can save your filters, which is kind of handy. So you can change your view settings here. And since I already deleted all my exceptions, you see that I don't have anything right here. But let's say I did. You can change by what the exceptions are. Let's say you see how it refreshes there. I don't know if you guys can see that on the receiving end here. But every single time I change the view, it will change what's down here on the bottom. You can also select an action. This is kind of the cool part here. This is the real view block events meat and potatoes, is that you can change what risks do, or how to change that risk and how to interact with it. And let's say a risk pops up and says, hey, you know, this is coming from let's go back to that Mac exception, like, hey, this is coming from your music filter, or from your music folder, I mean. And you're like, whoa, I want everything in my music folder to run. Like, everything in there is good. I know it is. But SEP doesn't know that. So you go ahead and add risk, whatever one you have selected down there. You go ahead and add that to the exceptions policy, and it goes ahead and creates an exception for you, which is really, really handy. And you can do the same thing with web domains. If you see the selections down here, anything, let's go back really quick. If you go under the exceptions, anything we can add right here under this menu. You see all these real quick, just kind of keep some of them in your head. If we go back to reports, there we go. You know, I'm just gonna let that go. But you can see that anything we saw in that option as far as remediation by application or anything like that was also the same menu, and you could really see how you could add all those to your exceptions. So just like we did in the clients tab there, I'm sorry, the clients page there, we can do in the reports page here, as long as we see that as a risk exception. Is you can actually add stuff to Symantec Insight's submissions. We're actually going to go back to our clients page and go to policies. It's the global scan options here. This is kind of cool. So you can see here is some of the Insight settings and how to change them. You can see some right here at the top. We have enable Insight for just Symantec trusted, or you can change it to Symantec and community trusted. What it just means is that Symantec has their own list of trusted files, and the community also, you know, generates their own lists. So you can use both, or you can just use the Symantec stuff. I also really like the help button here. What is Insight? So if you didn't watch this webinar, maybe that button's for you. I also like the setting here, scan network drive. You let's say you want to keep a network drive secure, or you know, some sort of other setting that would make you inquire for a password. You can also change the password here, or you can just say, hey, you know what, just check this to begin with, and you see if we uncheck it, that button changes. So you can add a password for network drives. If you want to keep them secure, make sure certain scans aren't running on them. And here's how you turn on actually the Insight cache, and you can see adding a host name and stuff and the ports. And of course, all of this is variable. You can always change the port to, you know, whatever you want. Now 8, now 5. You can change it to 1. I don't know why you would, but you can also require SSL. All these cool settings here are really handy. Anyways, yeah, I just wanted to quick add that little bit in just because I thought it was kind of cool. And thank you very much, and hope to hear from you guys soon. Thanks.